Hi everyone, I'm Marc Bates. I'm a metabolic health coach, and today's topic is the ruminant revolution, reclaiming ancestral wisdom. Why our ancestors were right about meat. Every major health organization tells you to limit red meat. Your great grandmother would have called this advice insane. She would have been right. The scientific evidence supporting animal source food spans 3 million years of human evolution. Yet modern dietary guidelines treat meat like a toxin. This disconnect represents one of the most consequential errors in public health history. The stakes extend far beyond individual nutrition. The systematic demonization of ruminant animals threatens human metabolic health and the regenerative potential of a global food system. The evolutionary foundation. Our ancestors, dating back 3 million years, were not just meat eaters, they were relishers. Ancestral archaeological evidence shows that their meat consumption were led to significant biological changes, including increases in body and brain sizes, eventually leading to the modern humans we are today. Early hominids used stone tools to access bone marrow, finding a stick of butter in a landscape devoid of fat. This evolutionary adaptation created the metabolic framework that defines human nutritional requirements today. Ruminants convert inedible biomass, grass, into nutrient-dense food rich in bioavailable protein, vitamin B12, iron, and fat-soluble vitamins through symbiotic relationships with gut microbes. The human digestive system evolved to process these concentrated nutrients efficiently. Plant-based alternatives require complex food combinations and synthetic supplementation to approximate what animal foods provide naturally. Historical data reinforces this evolutionary logic. Studies demonstrate that increased height correlates strongly with higher meat intake, with the tallest nations showing markedly decreased plant protein consumption in favor of animal proteins, especially dairy. Northern and Central European populations reaching peak male height in the Netherlands at 184 centimeters consume the highest rates of animal proteins globally. The nutritional crisis hidden in plain sight. Modern malnutrition masquerades as abundance. Calorie production has increased dramatically, yet nutritional quality has declined precipitously. The obesity epidemic represents malnutrition, not overconsumption. Eliminating ruminant foods creates specific nutritional gaps that synthetic alternatives cannot address. Vitamin B12, found only in animal products, is crucial for our health. I do have a complete video on vitamin B12 if you want to investigate that. And its deficiency can lead to irreversible neurological damage. This is particularly concerning for children and older people. Heme iron from animal sources demonstrates 4 to 6 times higher bioavailability than non-heme iron from plants. Iron deficiency remains the leading cause of anemia worldwide, even in developed nations with abundant plant-based iron sources. Zinc bioavailability suffers similar constraints in plant-based systems, where phytates bind minerals and reduce absorption by 30 to 50%. Vitamin A requires conversion from plant beta-carotene to usable retinol, which functions poorly in infants, elderly individuals, and those with metabolic dysfunction. Long-chain omega-3 fatty acids, DHA and EPA, found in grass-fed ruminant fat cannot be adequately synthesized from plant-based ALA sources. Conversion efficiency remains below 5% for most individuals. Creatine, carnosine, and taurine exist exclusively in animal foods. Their absence correlates with higher rates of depression and fatigue in plant-exclusive dietary patterns. At-risk populations face amplified consequences. The WHO and UNICEF explicitly warn against strict vegan diets for children unless expertly managed. Elderly individuals require higher quality protein to prevent sarcopenia. That's wasting away, muscle wasting. Yet plant-based proteins demonstrate inferior absorption profiles. Women of reproductive age show significantly higher anemia rates on vegetarian and vegan dietary patterns during gestation, when iron, zinc, and B12 demands increase substantially. Okay, if you're learning something, please like, share, subscribe to the channel. It helps us a great deal. Thank you so much. Okay, so why? The political economy of anti-meat guidelines. The transformation from meat as medicine to meat as toxin represents institutional capture, not scientific evolution. In 1933, the U.S. Meat and Livestock Board declared that meat did not cause disease and remained essential for recovery and resilience. Physicians prescribed organ meats to treat anemia, infertility, and behavioral disorders. The reverse began with President Eisenhower's 1955 heart attack and Ansel Keys' charismatic promotion of the diet-heart hypotheses. Keys cherry-picked data from 6 countries while excluding nations contradicting his saturated fat theory. The Sugar Research Foundation accelerated this narrative shift by paying Harvard scientists to downplay sugar's controversial cardiovascular risks and blame saturated fat instead. They paid Harvard scientists to downplay sugar's cardiovascular risks. Follow the money. Marc Hegsted, who received this funding, later helped draft the U.S. Dietary Guidelines. Wow. Did you ever hear that before? The 1977 McGovern report institutionalized these recommendations without randomized clinical trials or solid metabolic data. The guidelines explicitly favored plant-based grain agriculture, aligning with USDA economic priorities rather than nutritional science. Yeah, the whole idea was to make sure that they could grow enough calories to make sure that whatever the minimum that they gave to food stamp people was the 1,800 calories that everyone was supposed to get. Didn't matter where the calories came from. Didn't matter if they were nutritionally viable. All it mattered was that they could provide this calories to these people, because that's what the USD was in charge of the food stamp program. There's a similar issue in Sweden where they did the exact same thing. They were giving away food stamps essentially to the poor portion of their population, with the intent that the people had to buy so many calories, right? Because they were just curious about filling their belly, not providing nutrition. Makes you wonder sometimes. Multiple stakeholder groups benefit from anti-meat messaging. Governments achieve climate targets through symbolic livestock reductions. Ultra-processed food manufacturers monetize patented plant-based alternatives with higher profit margins than commodity meat. Do you ever wonder why, impossible meat is impossibly expensive? Because they're making a ton of money on that. And it has to come out of a laboratory. It's not healthy for you. It is absolutely not healthy. In fact, there are places that refuse to sell that because it's completely unhealthy. Okay? Pharmaceutical companies profit from deficiency-related conditions that require supplements and medications. Oh, do you ever wonder why there are all these supplements on all these things that come from pharmaceutical companies? Because they're for profit, right? We talk about fiber supplements and all this stuff to make you go poo, supposedly. You don't need them. They're just a massive scam on the consumer. Okay? Remember this part. Academic institutions, these are the universities, receive funding for politically aligned plant-based research, while researchers who question the consensus struggle for publication and financial support. It's a fact. I have a lot of the information on this. Remember, don't trust all of the supposed studies that prove stuff. First of all, somebody may fund a study, and if it doesn't prove what they want, they don't have to publish it. There were studies done in the 70s that are just coming to be known today because the original people who did the study hid the data. Then when they died, somebody found the data in a basement or in a closet somewhere and said, hey, this is interesting, let's publish it. And it completely went against what was the nutritional consensus at the time. Follow the money. Always follow the money. The EAT, or Eat Lancet Commission, this is a UK group, a high-profile initiative funded by pharmaceutical-linked investments. Keep that in mind, follow the money, exemplifies this dynamic. It promoted a planetary health diet that contains less than 12% of children's daily B12 requirements, potentially reflecting the influence of its founders on its dietary recommendation. Yes, the founders of Eat Lancet were vegans and vegan groups. Okay. You want your children to be sick? Don't give them B12. This approach favors centralized industrial food systems over regional regenerative models. Yeah. Oh, the other people who sponsored Eat Lancet, major corporations who were building all the ultra-processed foods, because it can be put in boxes. They can build it cheaply. They can store it forever. They can ship it around the world. It never goes bad, right? Remember that story, the Twinkies, you can leave it on the counter and it never goes bad? Yeah, because even the bacteria won't go after that stuff. It is so bad. Okay? And why does it say soft and moist for years? Yeah, I wouldn't eat that. Okay, so this approach favors centralized, right? People follow the money. These big corporations who fund all this stuff, they're the ones who get the government and the institutions like the universities to do all their research. Okay? Oh, and this is one of my favorite ones. This one's starting to die down finally. Environmental truth versus climate theater. The environmental case against ruminants collapses under scientific scrutiny. Eliminating animal agriculture from the United States would reduce greenhouse gas emissions by only 2.5% nationally and 0.4% globally, while creating widespread nutritional deficiencies. This calculation ignores the fundamental distinction between agricultural land and arable land. Most agricultural biomass remains inedible to humans, but converts to nutrition through ruminant digestion. Methane emissions, cow farts, right? Remember, they're trying to get rid of the cows because of cow farts, from livestock participate in the biogenic carbon cycle, breaking down into CO2 and water within a decade. The CO2 gets reabsorbed by pasture grasses, creating a closed-loop system rather than a net atmospheric additions. Properly managed ruminants support regenerative ecosystems through rotational grazing that builds soil carbon, enhances biodiversity, and reduces desertification. Regenerative grazing systems can sequester up to 3.6 tons of carbon per hectare annually. Cows in a regenerative grazing system versus a feedlot are actually net carbon sinks. They put more carbon back into the atmosphere than the cows potentially fart. Okay? And that's a closed loop anyways. It's actually very green. Scaling these findings to global pasture land suggests 10.2 GTC a year potential soil carbon capture. Okay, through grazing and sufficient to offset all human emissions. You want to worry about how much cars and factories are emitting? Put more cows in the field, and that takes care of the problem. Industrial feedlot systems represent human-imposed distortions, most not reflections of ruminant biology. The critique should target confinement practices rather than the animals themselves. Yes, those factory feedlots are terrible. Okay? Integrated crop livestock systems demonstrate superior outcomes. Brazilian models show cattle grazing improving soil health while maintaining crop yields, contradicting the false choice between animal agriculture and environmental protection. Okay, you want to look up something, especially if you live in the Midwest? When the settlers came to this country, the topsoil was just feet thick. I mean, it went down, I don't know, 15, 20, 30 feet, whatever. It was so deep they couldn't they couldn't fathom it, right? But and that was from bison in the millions, even a billion, let's say, roaming the grasslands in these grazing patterns, rebuilding and constantly reinforcing the topsoil. Well, what? Let's say 1810, 1800s to 2000, so 200 years. 200 years, we've almost depleted the topsoil. The monocrop culture, where they're tilling the soil, you lose a little bit of topsoil all the time, if not a lot. We're getting close to the point where we can't grow crops anymore. That should be something that scares you, especially if you eat things like grains and wheat and bread and stuff, because they're not going to be able to grow that effectively pretty soon. Okay, the regenerative vision. The ruminant revolution transforms food systems from extractive to regenerative, creating resilience across ecological, nutritional, and economic dimensions. This vision involves shifting from monocultural commodity crops, to managed grasslands with rotationally grazed ruminants and integrating silvopasture and agroforestry systems. These changes maximize biodiversity while eliminating synthetic inputs, leading to healthier ecosystems and more sustainable food production. Okay, the synthetic inputs, that's fertilizer, pesticides, glyphosates, right? Drying agents, weed, all those things. Well, guess what? You don't need those in a regenerative farm. And those things destroy the land. They are terrible for your health. They end up on all the produce. It's really terrible. And the runoff gets into the streams and rivers, pollutes the rivers, pollutes the lakes, and ultimately pollutes the ocean. I don't eat a lot of fish because of all the pollutants that go into the ocean, and the fish just pick it up naturally. Okay? Gotta be careful with that stuff. Farming practices in the regenerative vision mimic wild herbivore behavior through mob grazing, short duration, high intensity grazing, followed by long recovery periods. This approach naturally controls parasites, pests, and weeds without chemical interventions, mirroring the grazing patterns of wild herbivores and contributing to the ecosystem itself. It rebuilds the topsoil. Nutrient cycles close their biological processes. Manure fertilizes soil naturally, reducing dependence on synthetic nitrogen that acidifies soils, harms waterways, and accelerates greenhouse gas emissions. Food distribution is decentralized through regional processing hubs, mobile arbiters, and direct-to-consumer relationships. Transparent labeling shows breed, feed source, and soil carbon impact, reconnecting consumers with production methods. Cultural transformation elevates meat from a commodity to sacred nutrition, Organ meats, bones, and fat regain recognition as healing foods. Dietary guidelines shift from meat in moderation to animal foods as foundational. System resilience replaces fragility. Localized ecosystems regenerate without chemical dependence. Farmers achieve sovereignty through soil building, water storage, and carbon sequestration rather than external input dependence. Yeah, oh, and who's left out on this? Big, gigantic ConAgra. They don't like this. They really don't. Okay, the pathway forward. Institutional reform appears unlikely given entrenched interests and career risks associated with admitting decades of error. The transformation will emerge through parallel systems that demonstrate superior outcomes. Grassroots metabolic rebellion already shows millions reversing type 2 diabetes, autoimmune diseases, and obesity through ketogenic, carnivore, and animal-based dietary approaches. Online communities bypass mainstream medical channels, sharing transformation stories with more persuasive power than official guidelines. Processing infrastructure requires immediate attention. 4 companies, 4, control 80% of U.S. beef processing, creating bottlenecks that prevent small-scale regenerative producers from accessing markets. You want to know why beef was so problematic during COVID? Because of those 4 companies, one of them shut down and the other one had problems. All of a sudden, there was no processing of beef. Okay? Investment in regional meat processing cooperatives, mobile slaughter units, and on-farm inspection alternatives can decentralize this monopoly. Deregulation of small-scale processing reduces barriers without compromising safety. Go to your farmer's market, by the way, okay? Economic incentives need realignment. Commodity crop subsidies create artificially cheap plant calories, while regenerative farmers bear ecological restoration costs without compensation. Shifting subsidies toward ecosystem services rewards soil building, water retention, biodiversity enhancement, and carbon sequestration. Land access initiatives help young producers enter regenerative agriculture through lease-to-own incubator programs. Consumer education addresses decades of anti-meat propaganda through success stories, documentaries, and transparent labeling, distinguishing regenerative from industrial production methods. Okay, one of my favorite companies is a company called White Oaks Pastures in Georgia. They demonstrate the complete model. Over 2 decades, Will Harris transformed 3,200 acres from conventional to regenerative, building an on-site USDA processing facility and direct-to-consumer distribution networks. The operation created 180 jobs in a town of 600 residents, generated over $20 million annually, and through satellite monitoring, measurably improved biodiversity, soil carbon, and water retention. This blueprint scales through replication rather than regulation. Each successful regenerative operation provides proof of concept for others, building momentum through demonstrated results rather than theoretical arguments. Yes, you can look up White Oaks Pasture and you can order them from, I believe, almost anywhere in the country. It is absolutely fantastic beef. You're not going to get better beef anywhere else. Plus, they have others. They have pork and some other things, but I only buy beef. Okay, beyond false choices. The ruminant revolution transcends the false choice between human health and environmental protection. Properly managed ruminant systems optimize both simultaneously. They convert inedible biomass, grass, try eating some grass, see if you get any nutrition out of it, into bioavailable nutrition while sequestering carbon, building soil, and enhancing biodiversity. The revolution will not be televised, it will be live streamed. Thank you, all of my live streaming patriots. Crowdfunded and community-led through direct relationships between producers and consumers who prioritize biological truth over institutional messaging. Healthcare systems cracking under chronic disease burdens will eventually recognize that food represents the most potent intervention for metabolic dysfunction available. Okay? Reform becomes inevitable when treatment costs exceed the political costs of admitting error. The tipping point approaches as parallel systems demonstrate superior outcomes across health, environmental, and economic metrics. 50 years of flawed guidelines cannot overturn 3 million years of human evolution. Biology wins. Whether institutions will adapt to this reality or become irrelevant as communities reclaim control over their food, health, and land. Your ancestors were right about meat. This science reconfirms their wisdom. The ruminant revolution returns us to biological truth. Okay, thanks for watching. It's a little bit of a little tirade, but I'm big on this regenerative farming. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the appropriate section. If you have an idea for something you want me to research for you and produce a video on, leave me that as well. This is a community. I'm here to help you learn and prosper from it. So please, tell me what you're looking for. Thank you so much.